All right, welcome back to the Sean Trey Show. I've got a special guest with me today, Mr. Neil Levin. Now, Neil, can you tell people a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, I'm a surfer and I'm a musician. I've been competitively surfing since like middle school and stuff, and I still do. I have competitions lined up for the rest of the year, and that
Nice.
and making and surfing made me want to make music for my surf videos. And my dad always played guitar,
Oh,
so like I just started making music. So now I wear two hats. I'm a surfer and I'm a musician. I have the band Counterconformity, which I founded back in 2018. We're like a jam band, kind of
mm-hmm.
surfier version of the Grateful Dead. And then I also have my solo music, which I've lately been just trying to work with as many other people as possible. But I yeah, I just kind of do everything that I can.
Now, there's a lot that I want to unpack right there. Well, let's start off with I like talking about surfing. I mean, I grew up in California too. I love surfing. I'm a horrible surfer, but I love it. You know, I used to go out in San Diego and surf a lot here at Del Mar because that was right near my house when I was a kid. I lived out in Escondido. But surfing, man, professional surfer. That's pretty awesome. Competitive surfer.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
not pro yet, but that's my goal one day.
all right, cool. Cool. That's really cool. Now, tell me, why did you get into surfing? How did you get into that?
Well, I always liked going to the beach as a kid, and then my stepdad surfed, and I always
Hmm.
wanted to try it. And then one day I just gave it a go, and I didn't get really hooked right away, but I liked it. I knew I liked it, and then eventually when I got my own board, I was just like, the bug got me. I was ready to go.
Right? Yeah. Once you get into the water, it just changes everything, man. Now, like this is a really cool way in because one of the things that I find is when I talk to people, everyone has a different angle. Like in, I've had some people that they got into music because their parents were musicians and then they just went a different direction. But like it was always like there's always this process where people take it and make it their own. And that's really interesting that you have these surf videos like um, eh, that's really cool. So like can you talk to me about how did your surf videos shape the type of music that you were creating?
Well, it was definitely making me make music that was more like atmospheric and
Mm-hmm.
instrumental at first, which was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, that's not going to gain traction in like a popular community, like outside of people that want to hear that. And I realized that like I kind of wanted to start making music actually more seriously. So then I kind of like moved my focus more towards making poppier kind of tunes, but still containing those instrumental portions and stuff, those like little moments of like expression that kind of come out of the song, and like almost like stop it in a way where you're hearing like a conversation within the song like that you already know, and then bring it back to something that's more like hooky and chorusy. So yeah,
That's awesome.
the way that's how the surfing like handled that approach, because I wanted to be able to use parts of the songs as instrumental portions for maybe like a Instagram edit or something, but then also be able to have a
Yeah,
whole song on streaming platforms or something where if people like that one part, they could go and listen to the whole thing.
that's really awesome. Now, it's really interesting too. Something that I mean, because surf music in and of itself is its own genre that has a long history. I mean, we go way back to the Beach Boys. And
Yeah,
if you watch,
Shadows,
right?
Dick Dale, all those guys.
Uh-huh. And you watch like Endless Summer, and it's just like the original Endless Summer, and it was just chock full of like these great beach tracks that people um my mom was a California girl. She was born in Linwood and then grew up in Seal Beach and like, at the beach every single weekend, and she was a big beach rock fan, and so surf rock fan, and so that's really awesome. But what now the music is obviously extremely different, but what are some of your musical inspirations that you bring into your music or people
Oh
that you
yeah,
listen to even?
Well, there's definitely a wide eclectic mix of things there. I definitely started off my musical journey paying a lot of attention to like 60s rock and 70s rock, kind of like the Doors, the
Nice.
Grateful Dead, the Rolling Stones, Beatles, kind of you name it, Zeppelin, even Black Sabbath, like just kind of everybody that I'll just kind of run through songs on Spotify and stuff and listen intricately to them, and I try to kind of recreate that sound and texture off of those. But then I kind of like evolved a little bit to the point where I wanted to get
Mm,
other kind of decades and mix them together and have these different aesthetics. So then I went through an 80s like trip where I was like listening to the Bee Gees and disco and stuff. And a lot of that stuff's
nice.
like being reflected on my new album that's going to be coming out next year. And that was like a cool direction because I was getting more into dancier kind of stuff. And then
Yeah.
my friend Arvin, who I have to plug our music because we have like a duo where we make dance music and stuff.
Plug away, man.
Uh, yeah, we
This
have
is a
a duo
platform to
called
plug.
we have a duo called Noir Levin, and we make like house music, which is kind of the most modern music that I've made because up until that point I was using eight
That's cool.
track recorders and trying to like mimic that old sound. Like even now when I'm making my new music that sounds newer and modern, I'm still using analog emulators and stuff to try to give it like some texture and some noise that can like give it an atmosphere. But
Yeah,
with
man.
this new project, which we actually are working on our second album um, right now, like that project is going to be like a really good blend of all three of those with like the older side of music along with the newer side, and right in the middle there's a lot of 80s inspiration there, like with the synths that we chose, but there's still a lot of hard heavy guitars that like we're using amps that like are from the 70s. Like I have a 78 PV Classic. We have like wah pedals
Very
and things like
nice.
that mixed in with like that modern like house thumping kick. So it's just kind of like
Mm,
all those coming together is where I'm at right now in terms of
very
inspirations.
cool, man. Nice. That's really cool. And it's interesting. Like I love those videos on YouTube where like well, I think one was done by Pentatonics, and it was like a history of music, and you get like the changing genres in like it was like a minute and a half or 3 minutes, and they just go through these different vibes. And what's interesting to me is like how much sounds have really changed. Certainly we still have song structure, we still have, some of the basics are still inherent, but yet the way that we go about making music is completely different.
Definitely.
And the tonal sound quality is really different. So that's really interesting that you've got these very diverse like areas, the 80s, the 60s rock moving into the 70s, 60s, 70s moving into which was big sound. It was big sound, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
like
it's
moving
like
into the
walls or something.
yeah, right. It was just literally there were walls of sound, and then the 80s was just super intro the beginning of electronic, with
Yeah,
lots of
you got like
synths and stuff.
basic modulators and
Hmm.
arpeggiators and things like that. And plus, some of the textures, I like when I was paying a lot of attention to these older if you listen really close to like songs by Toto, especially like
Yeah, right.
their synth sounds almost sound cheesy now because
Uh-huh.
like when they were like using them, like that was the sound, but everybody's heard that sound
Yeah.
so much that like they're trying to mix it up and mess with it. But sometimes it's fun to go back and
Yep.
use that exact sound and like trick people in a way.
Right. No, it's totally. I think that's that old adage. There's nothing new under the sun. It's so true. You know what I mean? Because there is lots of new stuff, but I mean, if you can go back and take something and make it your own, and there's a couple of people that have come onto the show that have talked about, how also our ideas of music genres. We cling to religiously, but the truth is it's so fluid, man. And
Oh
like
yeah.
and
I mean, I
you
have a good
people are
story
making
for
new.
that.
I would love to hear a good story. So break in. It's your chance, man. Go for it.
Well, so there's this band that I really like called the Growlers, and they're from my
Okay.
area, and they're pretty big now. But I liked them back when they were kind of like still coming up, and now
Hmm.
they're worldwide. And one time I was out surfing at my local surf spot, and Brooks Nielsen, the lead singer, was out surfing, and like he's like a big influence of mine. So like I was like talking to him, and he was a really nice guy. He was like talking to me about my college,
Yeah.
he was asking me about my college plans, and at the time I was going to go to UCI, and I was telling him I was going to do the music program, and he was like, "Oh, you got to compete with all those like super smart kids or whatever." And then I asked him what genre he thinks his music is, and he said, "That's for the journalists." And I was like, "That's it right there. That's like exactly what it
Yeah.
is."
It
There's
is.
no real way to identify a musical genre other than if the sounds that they're using sound slightly similar, or if the chord progression is like in the blues, the chord progression doesn't change that much across all the songs. Like there
Yeah.
are variations, but like also with some jazz standards and things like that, like there's certain ways that they will play a tune form, and that's how it goes in that genre.
Hmm.
Even with pop, with like the 1/6/4 that's just dominated it. I mean, now there's other progressions that they use to try to keep it interesting, but I'll still turn on the radio and hear the same four chords, and if they make the
Right.
melody good, then that's all that matters. But
Right.
that's how they're
Well,
organizing these genres nowadays.
well, I also think too, like, I mean, I have to think that, some of the streaming services and the algorithms they're using are something that would also play into that, because the idea, big tech is going to always want to categorize things, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's like, um, it makes it easier for advertisers to find things and things like that, and that's just the way
Yeah.
that it works now. But I don't have any problem with that. But it's tricky for people who go, I want to branch out, and it's like you're looking at these two genres, you're like, damn, man, I don't know, because at the end of the day. But the good thing too is also, a lot of like Spotify and things like that, you find people by a similar sound. It's just kind of the vibe, you know what I mean? And whatever that vibe might be, I love the option when I get a song that I like, make a station based on that song. And just
I
kind
love
of,
that feature.
right? I love deep diving into things that have a certain vibe, because to me that's really special. And because especially if that song is outside of a given genre, if it's kind of fallen somewhere in between things, then I'll just click on that and see where we can go.
It works most of the time too. Like I mean, I've been doing that a
Most,
lot for Rufus Du Sol, because like I've listened to their whole
yeah.
catalog, and I've been wanting to hear songs that sound like them, and it'll pull up
Mm,
songs that kind of have that vibe. Like that, it's a perfect thing to do when you like your favorite artist like runs out of songs that you've heard a million times,
right.
and like in order to freshen things up, you can like listen to something that Spotify thinks sounds similar, but their algorithms are really good. Sometimes it'll throw in like a
Mm.
weird song that just doesn't make sense,
There's
but
always one
skip
that's like
it.
the
You can
outlier.
always just skip
Yeah, right.
it.
Well, and there's the thing too, like one of the things that I like too is, growing up on radio stations, because I'm older than you, and so, you pop something on in the car, and you got to give the stations credits for trying to highlight new people, for trying to play, stuff. The really good stations were doing that, you know what I mean? But a lot of them were just trying to play what they perceived as hits, because it kept people on, it kept people from turning away, and it kept people coming back for them to play advertising, stuff too,
Yeah,
so they can make money, and then they can, and it's all based on kind of retaining people, and that was mainly hits. But at the same time, there's a ton of artists out there that are not a hit right now, you know what I mean? But they're freaking phenomenal, and
yeah.
having a way to find that is, to me, really cool. Now, how do you go about um, writing your songs? How do you go about creating a new track?
Well, I think it honestly goes the same for everybody. When they start out, at least, they start out with random stuff. Like
I
they'll
like
have a
that.
guitar progression that they think is cool because they've never heard it before. They don't realize that like it's really hard to create a new chord progression, but like
Right.
because they have a good melody to go over it, you're chilling. That's all you need. You don't copyright the chords,
Mm.
copyright the melody. You got to make up some lyrics for that really cool chord progression that you got. The lyrics might not be cool, but if you're a good enough singer, people get it, it comes across to them. And then you
Yeah.
do this for a while, and then you reach like a new stage, especially like because I go to school for music too, so that really helps. Like
Yeah.
I got ear training and theory training in community college, and now I go to Berklee School of Music and do the online stuff. So
Dude, I
I
was studying at Berkeley. I took a break this semester because we've had a crazy
oh
lockdown here in Vietnam. But yeah, I was studying at Berkeley. I was doing their just their certificate program for music production, and
oh that's
I
really
wanted
cool.
to
I
learn.
mean I'm doing a production thing there too, so they have a really good production
Sweet,
program.
man. Dude, it's
How are you
awesome.
liking it?
I love it because for me, my job is to work as a video producer and to make my wife is the star in our family. And so my wife was the first winner of Vietnam Idol, and she's like straight up a rock star, not rock, but she's a musician here, and we're making good cool stuff together, I think. And so I've been on the video side, making movies, making our music videos, and creating content there. And I love music, and I've got a huge collection. I grew up singing. I wouldn't have for a long time. I didn't classify myself as a singer first. You know what I mean? But like I really love it. But what I went to Berklee for was to try to learn more so I could make our stuff better. Because
Yeah, exactly.
it's and to everything has its own language. You know what I mean? And mix engineers have their own language. You know what I mean? And you
Oh, for
have to
sure.
understand EQ, you got to understand compression, you got to understand, just your basics of panning, because every music style has a different approach to those. And that is one thing, that is one area that genres really have differed in how they approach compression and EQ and reverb and delay.
And mastering too. There's so many different ways to master a song for genre.
Right.
That's one thing that I've been getting into in my last production class. I learned how to master, and that was like an experience in itself. Like I did a whole experiment in my class where I compared a BandLab audio mastering service by BandLab, because I have like a relationship with them where I kind of like talk to them and give them feedback and stuff. And then I compared it with my master, and I honestly liked the BandLab one better. But the people in the class liked the one that I mastered better just because they could detect the human touch. So I feel like you just have to always master it yourself.
Well, you hit on one thing, and that was my friend Tam, he goes by Tam now, came on, and he works for Village Sound in Nova Scotia, which is a big Canadian post. Is it Newfoundland? Sorry. But he was talking about how in his classes, when he was learning to mix and master, you have 100 students. You get 100 different mix and mastering approaches. It's literally, and if for music video, editing videos, it's the same thing too. Everyone has their own approach to it and their own style and their own, and there's definitely a wrong way to do it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. You can hear it.
You can hear it. It sounds horrible, but
But sometimes you're hearing that stuff on the radio. Like they do that on purpose, almost to make it just loud, without question.
And I think that's a spot on point. I think that we've also entered this the best place that I can point it out. I have a 5-year-old daughter, right? And so she'll be watching her videos, and the videos I screen what she watches, so she doesn't just sit there and watch crap, because YouTube is a dark and strange place for kids' videos, man. But she was watching one of this guy, and Blippy. He's a guy from Seattle who used to work TV production and now started his own kid channel, and he makes great videos. And the volume levels are just even through the whole video. Up to one point, he cranks up the volume so high that it's nearing distortion levels when he tells, "Okay, boys and girls, tell your mom and dad to subscribe to my video." He cranks the volume up. And so
that's smart.
We'll be watching.
That's business tactic.
It's crazy smart. It's crazy smart. Because like I'll be like, she'll be just chilling in the background doing something, and I'll put on something that's educational and I know is safe while I'm cutting some video. And then all of a sudden I'm like, what the hell just happened? I get this loud booming voice, and I was like, yeah, just subscribe, whatever, Not really like that, but you know what I mean? It's interesting because he gets the parents. He's getting their attention, It's like it pops you out of whatever you're doing. So it's a tactic. It's and he knows what he's doing. So
and Spotify tried to level it with the audio normalization, but I don't think it works.
It's interesting because I've heard some tracks that I definitely think are creeping outside of that leveling. So
they can still make it appear louder no matter how. All right, we can go on. We can talk about this all day.
No, it's all good, man. There's always lag, so I feel like I'm talking over people because I love deep diving. That's the whole point. When people message me up on the podcast, I'm like, what are we going to talk about? I'm like, whatever comes up, man. I'm down to go wherever. So you've got two main music projects: your solo work and your stuff with your band. Let's talk about your band a little bit first, and tell me about this project and kind of where it goes.
So this is our logo. We're called Counterconformity, and that's like a skull wave. We also like, I also run the record label Skull Wave Records, which is just like a small little area. It's like basically an artist collective for visual artists and other bands in the area to kind of just get access to like resources that we have that they might not have. Like, we have access to an amazing film crew, Provio Media, which that's actually awesome. Tonight, which when this airs it'll probably already be out, but there's a special live performance that Counterconformity did at Pulsar Jams in Long Beach last February, and they're putting a whole concert together, like a concert video together with professional recording and stuff. That's airing tonight at 7, it'll be out already. But basically,
hopefully people can go and find that. Hopefully it'll still be online. So it'll be awesome.
It'll be on. If you just search Counterconformity, it'll probably come up. But
awesome.
Yeah, like the whole thing with this project with Counterconformity and Skull Wave was to make a really accessible form of music. So Counterconformity songs are like a jam-oriented kind of structure, similar to the Grateful Dead, but we have our own sound that we've kind of worked on over the years, and nice. It shines in its simplicity because although some of our songs do have chord changes, a lot of the songs are based around improvisational takes on the song. So like rhythm guitar parts are kind of like, they're not just going to be a basic G chord or something. Like we're going to try to find ways to voice layers and melodies on top of each other. And like when there's guitar soloing happening, like it's interacting with the drums, interacting with the bass, interacting with the keys when they're there. Nice. And then there's a whole bunch of elements that kind of go into that. And now we've been lucky enough to have our old lineup that we started the band with in 2018 come back. 2 of the members left and went on breaks and did their own thing, and then we lost our keyboard player. There was just a little band drama that went down, and he went to another band. And then
every band has it.
It just happens. Like, but yeah, we got the old band back, and now we got this 2 guitar lineup, which is really cool. So the whole take of it is like, my idea with it at the end of it all, if it ever sees through, is I want to be able to have big parties or like concerts where people can literally bring their own instruments and kind of jam along. And obviously they're not going to be plugged in with the band on stage, but in an arena, like if songs are easy enough to play, like, and everybody knows them, they can bring like an acoustic guitar. And then eventually if everybody's doing it, or if there's a bunch of like, people could bring their bongos. Like, if you've ever been to a drum circle, you know how crazy that can get.
Yeah.
So
I was thinking it sounds like a drum circle on steroids, man, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's like our songs are not hard to play, but they can kind of bring people together still. They're singable, they're fun, they're danceable, and yeah, I mean we're not really there yet where everybody's bringing instruments and stuff, but we do play at this spot called the Rib Joint every now and then. And they have drums there that sometimes some of the workers will join in, and like, because that's like the easiest and most accessible one right there. But if somebody knew our songs on an acoustic guitar, they could just strum along in the audience and hopefully not make it sound worse than it does. You know?
That's awesome though. No, well, I want to point out, I come back to something that you said. I like something that you talked about there about your band. Well, just first of all, I want to touch on your record label. Like, that's really awesome because I feel like I worked on my career in film for a long time. I started out as an actor. And one of the challenges that I found again was this industry is an industry based on relationships. Film, music, the creative arts are really about relationships. And a lot of people guard the relationships they have, you know, and they're very much like, you know, and it's not negative. It's just people protect their friendships, and that's important to do. But at the same time, we can also have people who can create situations that they help each other, you know, because like, let's imagine I'm going to try to build my own guitar. I want to get a new guitar, right? Well, I can order a kit, you know, if I wanted to go the kit route, I could do that. And then, you know, I still don't know how to put the whole thing together, you know? So I probably would want to find someone who could show me how to do that, you know? Because maybe I do put it together, but it's not playable, you know what I mean? Or just, you know, the action's all off, you know, the neck isn't attached to the guitar correctly and it wobbles or something. I mean, you know what I mean? It could be that it's just not the best. And so the same thing happens with, you know, for a musician, you got to have a couple components. You got to have great music, you know, but you also need to know how to get your music out there. You also need to be able to, let's be real, it's YouTube world. You know, you got to be showing your stuff, you know, you need to be able to have photos of your band and project, you know what I mean? That are camera stuff is great, but if you can get someone who can take some nice pictures, and then you've got something that you can start pitching, you know what I mean? And start getting out there, you know, and thank God there's apps like Canva now, because it makes, you know, stuff accessible just to make, you know, nice little templates and like logos and stuff, which is awesome.
Totally.
But that's really awesome that you're doing that. And in the idea of the band as well is centered around like almost like a tribe, you know?
We want to get people involved, because I have really good memories of being at like Dead and Company concerts or like just local gatherings. Like I go every full moon, I go to a drum circle at a local beach, and it's really cool because like people that you'd never expect to see there just show up and they're dancing like nobody's even watching them, and it's like
so
really
welcoming.
And anybody can kind of, if there's an open drum, like people are so nice to let you use their instruments and stuff. Like everybody will kind of just get into it, and like everybody kind of figures it out. Like people who have never seen play an instrument before can like sit down on the drums and get it going. It's really cool,
right?
And I mean at Dead shows and stuff, there's like a sense of community because everybody's kind of in this big like journey together that they take you on in their music, and everybody kind of like when they get into a groove, like everybody's kind of in this, it's like nobody knew the dance, but everybody learned it. It was like everybody's synced up and stuff. So that's kind of what I want to create. Like we have like a small little community that comes to our shows and likes to dance and hang out and just have a good time and sit back and vibe out, because some of our songs can get pretty long. But the goal is just to get more people to come together, especially now, because there's a lot of music out there, but I feel like in order to make it as a musician, you have to have something that brings like, you have to bring something to the table for like an audience that'll kind of involve them more. Like it doesn't always become about just you all the time. Like it's not really about like people wanting to come and listen to your music. Like they have to have a reason to like it, you know?
And this is something that I talk to a lot of filmmakers about, like when they come on. Like the idea being, if you're in this just to get famous, that's cool. That's okay for you. But if you come into this with a purpose to unite people, to bring people together, and to bring something that people haven't seen, then you got the magic behind you. You know what I mean?
And if you accidentally become famous, then oh well.
That's a beautiful side of, you know, it's a beautiful side of it. But like, let's be real. The people that have gotten really famous were people that had stories to tell. that had messages to tell, like throughout. And I'm not just talking like people who kind of, are little blips, and there's nothing wrong with being a blip. If you watch a really great interview with Charlie Grant, he's a guitarist. He was on the video went up yesterday, and he talked about, like, he's like, we have this stigma toward one-hit wonders. Like, that's still an amazing,
It's
like,
super
achievement.
hard.
Yeah, it's crazy to get there. It's like, he's like, no one should stigmatize that. That's amazing. But on the flip side, if you look at bands that have real, like, social impact, and have been across the board people, they have messages. And it might not always be about activism or something like that, but it has messages that resonate, and at least resonates with their core group. And let's be real, bands have core groups in their fans,
Definitely.
You look at the Deadheads, you look at all of these different groups that have massive followings, they speak to people and on a topic.
And it says a lot about the people too, that are like, everybody, you can kind of tell who likes what kind of music based off of first interactions with at least some people. Some people, like, they'll be wearing all black, and then they'll like some, like, Rainbow Pixie something or other. But like most people, you can kind of read, like, their music taste like an open book, and that's kind of a cool thing, how much music taste actually shapes a person. Like, because I mean, there's a lot of people would agree that, like, the universe is music, like, with all the stuff about string theory and vibration and things that have been said forever. Like, so it's interesting to see how, like, the music that we have in our media, in our culture, like, can kind of permeate that, like, being.
I think so, and if you look at, like, if we want to deep dive on that topic, like, yeah, man, I think the entire universe is just like a vibration of a giant note or something, and that comes into, like, different philosophies of the Om and stuff like that, there's a lot of stuff in there, man. But that's a deep dive we can have for another conversation. But I would like to, and some of the, like, I've always really, one of the singers whose messages I just always, and since we're talking, like, kind of the surf community, I was always a huge fan of Mishka. Don't know if you know Mishka. He's a great, like, surf rock type guy based.
I might have heard his songs, but not know who he is.
Don't know. That's totally cool. Yeah. Take a listen sometime. But one of the things that I noticed is, he was introduced to me by a friend, is that not everyone knew him. He wasn't, like, super huge and mainstream, but, like, his community was, like, rock solid, man. And there was this real, like, and just because his songs spoke to people, and because his music had something that people were looking for, and so I find that that's real important, Now, getting into your solo stuff, and I want to ask something that's, like, because you have a band named Counterconformity, and, like, everyone has a message in their stuff they're creating. What's the message that you're trying to get across?
With Counterconformity, or with my solo stuff?
So with yourself, what are you trying to get across?
Well, at first I was trying to talk about all this psychedelic existential stuff, getting into like spirituality and things like that. Like, so my first 2 albums and first EP and stuff were about. But now, my message is basically pretty simple. I'm just trying to, or my message is, I guess not message, but my theme is that I want to make people feel something that I'm not making this sound cliche. Like, I actually want to make people feel like the same emotion that I was feeling, and almost convince them that that was something that they went through themselves, even if they didn't. Because that's something that I was having happen to me a lot. I was listening to, like, some new albums that came out pretty recently, and they're talking about things that I can't even relate to, like Lana Del Rey songs. Like, I'm the biggest Lana Del Rey fan, but I'm, like, the farthest from her demographic. And the fact that, like, she can still make me feel what it's like to, like, be a troubled teen, or like an empowered woman, or anything like that. Like, that's powerful. So
it's beautiful, right?
The songs that I've been writing lately, like, I've released 3 songs for my new album, two of which I've really been pushing. One of which was actually for a short film, and it's just going to appear on the album. But the first one was Lose Your Mind. And that one, I was literally trying to I was trying to convince somebody that they were in this rave environment with me, and then give them what I thought would be a perfect night at the end, where like you're laying on the hood of a car with a beautiful girl kind of staring at the stars, like, and like that might not have ever happened to them, but I want them to think that it's happening to them in that 3 minutes and 30 seconds. And then I just released another song called Redirection No Affection, and that's like a breakup song. And normally I try to like keep things fictional because I like writing stories, but sometimes like the story ends up being real life, so I was just pulling into my own personal Rolodex for that one. So and people were telling me like they've never even been through a breakup before, and like they were just feeling it through the song. So I was like,
and see, that's it. One of the things that I think is the most important thing, honestly, for the whole planet, and for the whole world, and it's a thing that music and film help, is empathy. The ability to not understand, but to appreciate what someone else is going through. Because we can't really ever understand someone else. But we can try to have the empathy toward them to kind of, feel like what they're feeling. And because like you hit a great point there with Lana Del Rey. That's not you. I live in Vietnam, which is a completely different worldview than my worldview of growing up. I was a California beach kid. You know what I mean? I was in San Diego at the beaches every weekend. My worldview is different. But then when I interact with my in-laws who grew up in a country that had just had a massive war finish, and the way they approach life is different than the way I do. Man, it's 6. It's early in the morning for me. I can't speak English correctly. But the point being is that one of the ways, and I live with my family, my wife's family. We share a big house, and it's a different culture, but I'm cool with that. And we still have times where we butt heads, but the reality is there's one time where all of that drops when we put on music. When music's playing, and we like different music, but when I listen to their music, I can still feel it. I feel it. You know what I mean? You listen to these songs, and I listen to the songs. Yeah.
You don't even the lyrics are kind of just there to guide the emotion, to give your mind the thing that it needs to be thinking about when it gets hit with the like when it gets hit with that phrasing. That's like where the emotion comes in.
Exactly, and it makes it so that for a couple minutes, and it's not just about me hearing it. It's about me hearing it and watching them experience it, because like. Let's be real. Like, there's a certain things that music is very much linked to memory as well. So when you smell, you smell something, you're like, oh man, Christmas. It takes you back to a point in time, and music's the same thing. And it might not be. I might not have that same memory, but I can still sit there and be in the community of people that are having that, and like. One of the best examples is Christmas in the U.S. is our big holiday, right? And and it's like, and even if people are not Christian, they can understand kind of the vibe of what's going on, And in Vietnam, the flip side of that, their biggest holiday is what they call Tet, or Lunar New Year, and so Lunar New Year is around February. And they've got, it's kind of like Christmas for the way they celebrate. It's all about family and getting together and sharing stuff, and food. But it's a very different vibe. But, when you hear the songs for that holiday, you kind of start getting the vibe of what it's all about. And the music is one of the things that's helped me understand that the best. And again,
that's really cool.
Empathy.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. Because Christmas has its own sound. What other holiday has its own? Halloween kind of has its own sound, but
but not the same,
Yeah, it's not the same. But
But Christmas and Lunar New Year have their own thing. I would argue that you could also in the U.S. have 4th of July. It has its own sound, and I would argue, and here's the reason: it's going to be rock.
Leonard Skinner.
Yeah, like Leonard Skinner, or like what do you call it? Bruce Springsteen.
Oh yeah, just all the American greats. Yeah, you're right.
All of that, like Americana rock is definitely a 4th of July thing. At least from what I remember, every time those fireworks are going off and they got that music, it's blaring, blasting at the 4th of July parties. But I mean, it's still not the same as like Christmas. That's got its own strong tradition. But getting back to you, man, where do you like? Because I mean, everyone's got a different dream for where this path takes them. You know what I mean? Like for this podcast, someone was like, "Why are you not putting these on Spotify?" And I was like, "Well, I don't want to have a radio show. My like my long-term goal is not to do like a podcast. I'd love to have a TV show. Not be an Oprah, but I
can see you doing
something
that.
like
I can
that.
see you doing that.
Dude, I'd love it. That would be a goal of mine, is to have a TV show. But I mean, I'm already thinking about how to modify this format. Like if I'm interviewing someone, I'm going to roll up to their home studio. I'm going to go check out their place. I want to go, sit and jam with them. They'll jam. I'll listen. More along those lines. But I want to interact with people. But that's kind of my vision. And someone else would have a vision of having like a radio podcast, and that's totally cool for them. What's your vision for where you want to take your show?
Well, I guess I want to just be a live.
Not
act.
Your show, your career.
Yeah. I want to be a live act though. I want to be known as like somebody that you have to see live. Like I guess like I don't really have a strong. I obviously want to be able to make money to support it all, so I don't have to do anything else. So I can put all my focus and energy into the music side of things. But my goal is that no matter how much I want the records to be good, but no matter how much the records are good, they know that when they go see me live, it's going to be way different in a good way, and it'll be a new experience for them. And that's where I want my career to be. I just want to be able to keep playing live shows, and people know that they're going to get something that they're not going to get anywhere else that night. Like they're going to get a special show for them, kind of thing.
I love that, man. I love people who are live musicians, because it's something that, again, not hating on people who don't do live, but like I remember a couple years ago I watched a performance at the Grammys from a group, won't name any names, but when they came on live, I was just like, man, that is not as good as what I listened to on the radio. And it was not that it had imperfections. It was just, autotune is an awesome thing. It helps fix things. Man, I use Melodyne all the time. Like, if you need to clean up vocals and just to make things sound crisp, it's cool.
Yeah, not make it noticeable, but just a little bit. I understand that. It makes studio days faster.
It does, and there might be something that has a tonal quality you like, but the person just missed something. But to be fair, I love live music, and you hit on that. There are some artists, people that I've never heard live, but you go and find their live albums, and they're just like amazing, like Queen. Queen live was, a crazy next level thing. And the Grateful Dead live was, I remember hearing this story about how there was, in the 90s, 80s and 90s, there was this huge underground trade in Grateful Dead live cassettes.
Oh, and selling tapes, yeah. Or like trading them.
And trading and selling tapes. I know
people that have whole wallfuls of like bookshelves of just random cassettes that their parents just recorded with Tascams, and they still have like all labeled.
Right. That was this huge thing, because for the Dead especially, every single performance was different, and like they were famous for that. And I mean, other singers to a degree, like I've got a bunch of cassettes, and that was a thing that was with cassettes. There were all of these live concerts, and with streaming, that is something that I feel has not slipped away. YouTube preserves it a lot. You know, people will be doing live sets on YouTube, which is what I was really happy to hear about you with your band doing, man. That's awesome. And it's awesome that you have a platform for that. And live streaming is a whole new thing too, that people are doing that, you know, and it really preserves a lot of it too. So I love that you talk about that. Now, tell me more about your live sets, man.
Well, yeah, Counterconformity actually has a live album out too on all streaming platforms, and that one's like exclusively. There's no video of it. Like, there's video of the canvas, like the moving image on Spotify that like is 8 seconds long.
Yeah.
There's different ones for each song,
Yeah.
but yeah, we every year we have the Halloween show. We're actually doing it again this October,
Nice.
but last year's Halloween show, we got our friend Alex Gallo to come out and guest guitar, and we just played a bunch of live music and re-recorded it all with everything mic'd up and then released it as a live album. So there's a bunch of different ways to catch the live experience with Counterconformity, but the same goes with my solo music too. Like there's also live performances that Provio Media put out of my solo band that I play with my dad, actually, he's from Seal Beach too, but he's an amazing
That's awesome.
guitarist, amazing bassist, and he just happens to play keyboard too. So we just put him on bass with his left hand and keyboard with his right hand, and we got like a trio going. And then the Counterconformity drummer,
Awesome.
Ethan Slayman, is in on drums there. So that live show is really fun because there's a lot of chemistry between Ethan and I already, because we've been playing in Counterconformity for the past few years, and he's the only drummer I really play with because we just know each other, and he knows like the vibe that I want to go for with the kind of improvised music, and he has his own take on it too. And then obviously there's a lot of chemistry with my dad. So
That's awesome.
so when we lock in, like there's nothing else better than that, really. Like last weekend we played a 2-hour show or a 3-hour show at the Rib Joint, which is like our local spot, and I had just came back from Portland, Oregon.
When I come back to the States, I'm hitting up the Rib Joint because that place just sounds awesome.
It's a good vibe. But yeah, I just got back from Portland.
Yeah.
And I was on an hour of sleep within 48 hours of driving, and I was able to play this 3-hour show, and like the music just kept me alive. Like I was totally chilling. It was like my favorite show I played. Like we were in sync, and I don't know how, but I guess that's just what'll happen.
That's awesome. I love how music can give you energy and that sometimes purpose. When I've got one, I love Daft Punk, man.
I love Daft Punk too.
And yeah, so but you know, one of my favorites is the Tron soundtrack that they were on.
Yeah, I like that too.
When I need vibes,
I got a couple of the free downloads.
I need vibes. Right, I found it on CD, so I got it really high quality. Yeah, and I also bought the FLAC, you know, so I've got the lossless, high quality audio that I just crank out. But like when I need vibes, when I want to feel inspired, when I want to feel like, yeah, man, I'm gonna take on the world, whatever, man. I just put that on. And I'm like, I can do anything. I mean, it's interesting that like a song can give you that vibe. You know, it can give you that feeling.
Yeah, I think that's where the lure of a lot of the popular music nowadays is, where like, I mean, I'm finally starting to understand it, because I appreciate good rap, but I've always been an objectioner to a lot of the rap that kids are listening to nowadays. But I understand it, because part of it does have to do with our attention spans being shorter, and the other part just has to do with the stuff that they're saying. Like, even though it's like kind of it's like super cocky, and it's super patriarchal, or it's bad because they're directly talking about really hard drugs. Like, they're kind of like hyping you up to do something. So like, if you're like lifting weights, you might want that. Or like, if you got to do something, you might want to hear like, oh, I'm the best in the house, and right? No, everybody love me. Like, that might be what you're going for. Like, there's a lot of good hip hop. Don't get me wrong, but like, there's obviously some notable ones that like.
Yeah, I think that you hit on a point. I think that every genre has good stuff and bad stuff, for sure. I mean, I love hip hop, but I love like most.
But I'm saying it has a place.
No. But I'm saying like, and if you listen to Common stuff is all about a message, man. And it's like, and I think it's about
technical.
what. Well, Common's message, like, from the song from, oh man, I'm blanking on the song name right now. The one that he did with John Legend. You know what I mean? That's about Memphis.
Oh, the one, yeah, the March.
The March song.
Yeah.
It's early in the morning for me, and I can't remember anything right now. But yeah, man, it's about finding. But again, it comes back to the whole thing that I was talking about earlier about finding your purpose. Like, what are you trying to share with people? What is the message that you're trying to share? Because the truth is that any type of music can be patriarchal, can be, talking about topics, that are not, and this is something that I notice, especially with kids content. Like, here's the best example. So there is this whole subculture of like people who make kids videos with toys. And they do it because they can make a ton of money on YouTube views. And like, so it's like, there's this one that's like something castle, and it's this dad, and he dresses his daughter up and has her go to do all these situations. And there's one time where like this little, like 6-year-old kid, he's like, now we're going to the club, and the girl's like, like just dancing in the club. And I'm like, that's not what I want my 5-year-old watching, man. And it's not that it's a problem, but like, it's about like, what are you teaching people? What are you sharing? And like, are we bringing people together and highlighting positivity? And that's like that.
Or is there
that's
anything
the whole point
meaningful
of this
being brought into?
Yes.
Like, I think that goes back to the fundamental purpose of art. That, like, I mean, I had to take an
Yes.
art class at Berklee that like teaches you about the whole history of the philosophy of what art is even about. And like, my conclusion that I came to in a nutshell is that art is just something that was made intentionally with a purpose, and it doesn't even have to have a meaning, but it has to have something that is like tangible, either like physically tangible, that, or mentally, where you can take something with you out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And like, even if it misses the mark from what the artist wanted to portray, it can still make the mark in terms of satisfying some other niche in the consumer's mind. So that's where that comes down to that, for me at least.
And I completely agree. And for a long time, when I lived in Asia, I was a teacher, and I taught kids, English, and then I taught other topics too. I taught acting and such. And for me, what I recognize is when you make a movie, when you make a song, on some level, you're a teacher. And what are you teaching people? Because every single communication, I believe we're trying to get something or to tell something, and what are you trying to convey? I feel that every song is still trying to educate people on either an emotion or a topic, and that can be good education or it can be negativity, and I think, and I'm not saying that sometimes going down those paths isn't a good idea, but I am saying that, is it intentional? Are you aware that what you're doing, and this is the thing that I talk about, one of the reasons I made this podcast is so that, I've got a 5-year-old daughter, and God knows that this world has enough craziness in it. I want to be one balancing factor that can be putting out some positivity. And that's why I'm trying to do these every day, because if I'm not stepping up every day, someone else will fill in my place, and it might not be something good they're putting out. So, it's like we have to step up. It's exhausting. I'm tired.
I believe it. Yeah, you're waking up at all times. That's good on you for staying dedicated, though.
I definitely am going to be, after the lockdown here, I'm hiring another editor, though, because I need some help. It's all good, man. Now, I want to ask you a question. If you could go back in time to a younger version of yourself, what advice would you give yourself?
Don't crash your car. That's my advice. Yeah. I mean, I think I got into a car. That car crash definitely is the reason I make music now. But I think I still would have ended up making music, and I would have had like that car still. And like,
nice.
Yeah, I think that's my only regret. I think everything else in my life has happened for a reason. I mean, even the car crash happened for a reason.
I believe that.
But
completely.
I mean, like, yeah, like I wouldn't really go back and change anything. Like even the car crash, that was more of like a joke.
Yeah,
But
right. No,
yeah, like I mean, I'd want to change. I'd want to change something like in the moment it's happening for sure. But like I've never had
yeah.
something happen that I've like looked back at like, oh, like that. There's no reason for that to be there.
Well, let's shift it then. What advice would you give your younger self?
Um, I think I would tell myself to let loose a little bit more and not. I mean, it's hard to do. It's hard to convince a high schooler to not care what others think and stuff. But I feel like if I did that earlier on, it would have been better off because then everybody else around me would have been like that, and it would have been a way cooler vibe all around. I mean,
I like that.
yeah, that I would just tell myself to lay off the thoughts a little bit, like
It's a good place to
thinking
be,
too
man.
much.
This thing can make us all crazy, right?
Exactly.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on today, and I have had a very fun conversation. That's the one thing too. Like everyone's like, what is the podcast about? And it's like on one level, it's about hearing people's stories, but also it's about I'm enjoying making new friends, man. It's a good time. So I
Yeah, man.
appreciate it,
Let's
man.
keep in touch. Thank you for
Yeah,
having
for
me on here.
sure.
I had a really good time.
Yeah, me too.